Good morning, Ryan. And you got it.
Oh, I thought you were the.
No, that's a problem.
Oh, I got it.
Nikki's working on it. Ryan, you there? Karen, can you hear us?
I can.
Hey. Yeah.
Yes, I met Christina and Regina.
Regina.
But that's what I said, Regina.
Burr. We call her. Regina.
Oh, I thought you were telling me that was your last name. You were like Regina Burr, and I was like, okay, nice to meet you. Regina. Burr, and I was like, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name. Regina, got it. Christine, okay, yeah, so see, I'm terrible at names, so I apologize. Christine. I don't know, I always say that, I'm like, I'm not, like, I should be better at names considering what I do for a living.
I know.
Like faces, I'll be like, oh yeah, I know you. How so if I introduce myself 7 times, please don't take it personally. Because I forget.
So Sharon, we are working on, working on some text in here. So once we get that figured out, we'll be able to share the PowerPoint. You can just kind of bear with us for just a couple minutes, okay?
That works.
So Regina, how do you spell that?
Bergina.
Okay. Just like I would have spelled it, but. That's crazy. Good. I had to actually go like all the hair. Oh, well, I'm glad I don't do that. So should we start? Yeah, I think we're gonna start. I'm Erin D. Armis with Onward. I still catch myself, it's like when you get married and you say your old last name, not Shelter anymore, we're Onward. So I joined, if you don't know me, I joined the team, about a month ago. And what was your name? Adriana, nice to meet you. So thank you for joining. Jessica is working on trying to get into the Zoom to be able to share the PowerPoint. So right now we're gonna go ahead and start. For those of you, if you're on Zoom, sorry, you won't be able to see the PowerPoint yet. You'll just have to listen to me. But this is on condo financing. So it's a little bit different than regular financing. So things that can trip you up, and if you don't do them often, it's good to just have a refresher. So when you get to one, you'll kind of know what to look for. So we will go over conventional condo approvals, FHA and VA condo approvals, because those are different. Some common red flags and suggested contingency timeframes and steps and different things you'll want in condo contracts. We'll talk about the full and the limited condo review process and why there are 2 and when do you get them. FHA and VA, again, the documentation that's required from HOAs for us to do condo reviews. What common items can render a condo ineligible, especially when you're on the listing side, it's good to know that. And again, suggesting contingency. So before, anytime.
I think before we go through what the review looks like in the approval process, the very first step is figuring out whether the property is a condo. And so y'all know I always suggest having me pull the deed before you either go on your listing appointment or before you put in a contract if you're representing the buyer. But no matter what side you're on, you want to know if the property is a condo, and the deed is what will tell you that. So on the deed, there's the legal description, and that legal description will have some sort of reference to a declaration of condominium or condo decks So that is what you're looking for to see if it's a condo, not just relying on the listing agent, not seeing what other properties were listed as, not like the listing itself, and that's all helpful information. But what's really determinative is what the actual deed says. So know that going in, because if you call your lender and you think it's a townhome, you get everything set up, and then it's a condo, it's a real problem, because all of your timing stuff is gonna be off. You're not gonna have all the right pieces in the contract. So start by figuring out on your own and verifying whether it's actually a condo or not.
Yeah, and don't trust even the tax bill, like, he's right, like the deed, go to her, because if you, when someone comes to me and they're, even if it's called blank XYZ townhomes, it can still be titled as a condo. So there's just, because it's in the name doesn't mean it either. I've gotten contracts like that, with, well, it's a townhouse. I always go to my attorney first at the beginning of that contract. If it doesn't say condo and I'm not 100% sure it isn't, I'm looking for it on the front end too, because as you'll see from this, we'll walk through and you'll know what all the differences are and why we really want to know at the beginning.
And just looking at the building doesn't always help either, because people think a townhome means it looks like houses switched together and condos are stacked. Whereas the stacked look will always be a condo, you're not gonna have like a stacked townhome, but that townhome look sometimes will be a condo as well, so just keep that in mind.
Perfect. Introduction. So, okay, so conventional condo approval process. So if your buyer is doing a conventional loan, there's gonna be, two options for the review, and it's based on down payment. So a full condo review, we're gonna go over here. This is anyone putting down less than 10%. So your 3% buyers, your 5% buyers, anyone under 10%, it's gonna require a full review. So that means that we as a lender are ordering condo docs per the HOA's instruction. What I mean by that is it's usually online. Usually we're reaching out to them and they're saying, hey, go here to this website, place your order. We're paying for it. It'll tell us there how long it's gonna take to get them back. Sometimes they're almost immediate. There's one, I can't remember which management company, it can take up to 10 days unless you expedite it. So there's quite a range there. Usually they're around $250-ish to get the document. The buyers pay that, so we'll order them on the front end on our dime, and then that will be added onto their settlement statement. We only charge them exactly what we're charged, so.
And no, that's not the same thing as an HOA closing letter. Correct. I've had that issue come up, and a lot of closing letters are right at that $250 mark. So buyers will tell sellers, oh, I've already paid for that, you don't have to do it. Make sure you're coaching your buyers that what the lender orders is a completely different set of information than what the closing attorney has to order per the CAD to get that closing letter. It's a different.
Yeah, what we're ordering is information about the HOA and the complex so that we can underwrite that and make sure that basically it's a good property to lend on, and Fannie or Freddie are going to take that loan. So we're making sure it meets certain requirements that Fannie and Freddie have to even do a loan on it. What she's ordering, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically the information about that unit, confirming what the HOA dues are, all that kind of stuff, seeing if the seller owes money, and that's like the final, I don't know, statement sort of, what the fees are and stuff like that. So it's different than what we're ordering. So just, if that helps to know a little bit about which docs are what. So we're ordering a full lender questionnaire and the full review. That means the questionnaire is longer. There's also a limited questionnaire that's shorter. A budget and the insurance. So we need the budget, the current year's budget, and we need a copy of the insurance. Those three things are non-negotiable. Have to have those. That's what we're looking at. Then we have a separate condo department of underwriters that that's all they do all day is review the condos and underwrite the condos for approval. So it's completely separate than the underwriting department that is underwriting the loan and the buyer. So we submit it to them for a full review, usually takes around 3 days, potentially more if either the HOA, if there's additional questions for them, we submit those 3 documents and hey, maybe there's some questions on the questionnaire that didn't get answered, or it's answered in a way that prompts additional questions like, hey, okay, you said yes, here, we need more information, or the insurance document is missing something. So there are times fairly regularly that we have to go back and get additional info, but that initial review just takes a few days, and then we kind of know, first of all, if there's something glaring that's a problem, or hey, we just need a little bit more info. No review is necessary for 2 to 4 unit projects. So like a really tiny, you've got like two, 3 or 4 condos, so they're sold separately. They're not, one building, or sold that way. Those, we don't have to do a review like this. So it's a little, even if it's titled as a condo, it's a little bit different of an animal. Any investment or second home purchases that are condos, that have a loan to value of 75% or more. So basically, if you got an investment or a second home purchase and they're putting down less than 25% or less, we're doing the full review. So remember, if it's a primary home, less than 10%, we're doing the full review. If it's an investment or a second, less than 25%. So that's the full review. The limited review is very similar. It's the biggest difference is that questionnaire that we're ordering is shorter. So we're not asking everything on the limited that we're asking on the full. So we're, what the heck happened? You know how to do that?
I think you just have to like click it.
Oh, that's
Hey, can y'all hear me? Hello? Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
You can share the screen now.
You can see it?
I can see you guys, but I just logged in and got you permission to share the screen.
Maybe that's why it flipped out.
So it's on this screen. I feel like it is shared.
I don't think it's shared to the Zoom people.
Correct.
Go to Zoom first. And then. Now we can share our screen. Yeah. How are you? Good, thank you.
Perfect.
Sorry about that, folks.
Thanks so much.
Yay, y'all can see now?
We can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Review, these are your buyers putting down 10% or more, so we're still ordering a questionnaire, the insurance and the budget. But the questionnaire is shorter, so there's certain things that they're not having to answer. So certain answers on the limited, this is one thing to be aware of. So say your borrower's putting down 10% or 20%, we're starting with a limited review. So if they answer some questions on that initial questionnaire that raise a red flag, it could be, we're asking about the property's amenities, or we're asking about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something offhand that would raise a red flag. Anything that we need more information about, maybe an assessment, maybe potential legal, just because there's something legal going on, the condo doesn't automatically make it ineligible. We would have to dig further into that, so those kinds of things. If there's some answer on there that's like, hey, we need more information, that could automatically say, all right, we need to get the full questionnaire done. So that could happen, but usually if it's a limited review and it goes through fine, it's usually a shorter process than the full.
And when you mentioned that there's an illegal going on with the condo from a listing perspective, just with HOAs in general, if there's some sort of lawsuit that really doesn't involve the property, it's probably gonna be okay. You still wanna make sure that's being disclosed on the community association disclosure, because when you're making any disclosure, the seller has to do it honestly, right? So there's a question on there that asks about any sort of litigation. You want to make sure that your seller is filling that out correctly. But if there's litigation that actually involves the property that you're selling, that could keep them from being able to sell the property at all. So know that there could be things that come up as far as a condo review, but as far as whether your seller can even sell the property, if there's a pending litigation, there's like an automatic stay on the property, and we can get around some of it we can't. So make sure that you're having that conversation and bringing that up to the closing attorney, so we can try to get some kind of approval or guidance for you guys before you're like under contract.
What would be one that wouldn't cause that, like someone fell or something?
So sometimes like one HOA and a neighboring HOA will get into a dispute because the pool is a little bit over to the next neighborhood's property, or there's a drainage issue. Stuff like that is not gonna affect the house you're selling. Whereas if the house you're selling sits on a lake and all the homeowners of the lake are suing the HOA because there's an issue with the money, well, your property is like a named property, or your seller's a named seller in that lawsuit. So now it's directly involved.
Okay.
Thanks, Ashley. Okay, so that's the conventional approval process, so full or limited. Some red flags here in eligible property characteristics: hotel, motel. They do allow some of those now, condo style, but they're very, strict on them, so if you're dealing with a condo and it is in, part of a hotel, let's look at that first. Don't just roll with it like it's a regular condo, because that's a different kind of an animal. If there are over 15% of the units that are over 60 days delinquent, so two important notes in there, 15% is that first number. You've got more than 15% of the number of units that are currently delinquent, that's a problem, as long as they're 60 days or more delinquent. So when we get a questionnaire back and it says, the number of, it asks them the number of delinquencies. So we know the number, we're asking them, first of all, how many units are in there. So say there's 100 units, let's make that easy, and they come back and tell me 22 units are delinquent, that's 22%. We're like, oh, hey, this is a problem. But if they didn't answer for sure, if there's 60 days or more, that's the question back to them. Hey, of these 22 units that are delinquent, are they all 60 days or more delinquent, or are some of them less than 60 days? So if they come back and say, hey, 12 of them are 60 days and over, and 10 of them are less than 30, we're only concerned about the 60. So now the numbers work, we're okay. So sometimes, we've had that come up where we're going back to them and confirming it, and they may come back and say, yeah, they're all over 60. Okay, well, let me know. That's a problem. And honestly, that's something that, we don't want our buyers getting into something where people are paying their dues anyway. So this is a protection for the buyer also, but obviously Fannie and Freddie don't want to lend on a condo if, a quarter of the people aren't paying their dues as they should. If there is commercial space over 35%, so if you've got a live-work kind of situation and they've got some retail space, as long as it's under 35%, you're okay. Over 25% owned by a single entity. That's Freddie's number, Fannie's is 20%. So if you hear us talk about Fannie and Freddie, usually most of their guidelines are the same. There's only a couple differences here and there. That's one of them on a condo. So Freddie will actually allow more to be owned by a single entity. So that usually that's going to be an investor. You've got 100 units again, you've got one investor, whether it's an LLC or a single person. If they own 10 units, they're owning 10% of them. That's okay. If they own 30 units, we've got a problem. They own too many. That's too high of a risk. They don't like that. What happens if something happens to that investor? They've got, 30% of the community they own, they foreclose on whatever. They don't like that risk. Properties with 5 to 20 units. Oh, I can't see that number. I think it's the maximum is 2 units. So basically, again, on these smaller properties, there are some different caveats. They change those numbers just a little bit. I'm pretty sure it's 2. So just be mindful of that. Thank you. Just be mindful of that, that's a thing.
That's a pretty low number, but.
Yeah, on 5 to 20 units, on 20 units, yeah, that's only 10%. But a smaller complex, fewer people paying dues, they're a little more, risk averse. So budget reserve less than 10%. So remember from the last couple of slides, we're going to copy the current year's budget. This is what we're looking for. We're really looking for reserves. So the requirement is 10% of their budget has to be in their reserve account. So if their, annual budget is 500,000, we're looking for 50 grand in that reserve. And that has to be a separate line item, like they have to be contributing to that. It can't just be, oh, randomly we have this left over, so we're calling it reserves. No, it's got to be like a consistent, you've got a budget, reserves as a line item, you're putting at least 10% of your total budget in there. Insurance needs to cover 100% of rebuild. This is probably the most common thing we're seeing lately as an issue. We've had a couple of condos come back, and roofs are one of the most common things where they're insured for not replacement coverage, but cash value. That's a problem because for the condo to be approved, they have to be covered at replacement. So if that roof needs replacement, the insurance has to cover the whole replacement. That's what they're looking for here, not pay the actual cash value of a 15-year-old roof. So that's a big one. It needs to have employee loss step coverage. That's a separate. So in that homeowners or the insurance page that we're getting, we're looking for that. I can't remember. Do you remember the name of that policy? It has an umbrella.
I think it's an umbrella.
Yeah, I can't think of it. Yeah,
But there's a couple insurances, so like for a condo, the building itself has to be insured, so that's what she's talking about. Whereas your buyer has to insure everything inside the wall, so someone owns the building, right, it's not your buyer or the seller, so they need the building insured. And then also your person has to insure what they own, which is what's inside the wall, so there's two policies on condo.
yeah, the insurance that covers 100% of rebuild, obviously that's talking about the building coverage. So that big building, the HOA is gonna have an insurance policy, and then we'll talk about what the buyer's gonna get. But there's I can't remember the name of it, it'll come to me eventually, but there's a separate line we have to see on that insurance policy that is also covering theft or loss from employees. And it also can't be shared, so they can't be sharing insurance with another HOA or another entity, it has to be just for their, like,
And there wasn't.
I know, well, I didn't either, and so I got here. So, yeah. They don't like shared insurance, no, it doesn't.
Okay, is
No,
that
I can't.
per building, like, some condos are in, like, you're in tower 1, tower 2, tower 3. Does the condo keep it separate, or does like? tower-
No, as long as the HOA is, the HOA can have a policy that covers all the buildings, they just can't share it with, say, there's a neighboring community or something, or it's weird, you don't see it very often, but it is a thing. It might be a thing more in other areas, we don't see it much here, but just know in case you're wondering. Okay, so this isn't.
So this is what happened, I changed you, so you have to like down here, so if you like toggle the thing down in this corner, something will pop up and it'll have the little thing, so you have to kind of show you it.
I wonder if it's because this is are we looking at the screen share and not the actual PowerPoint? It was working, so click, maybe.
Yeah, so like that will layer up, so we click that.
All right, here we go. So documents and timelines. So we already talked about the documents we needed. Most of these have to be ordered online. We already talked about that. The condo department is the one that reviews it. And so I would suggest no shorter than, this is a little bit old because frankly, we're closing a lot of loans in 18 days at this point, but I would do, if your borrower is already pre-underwritten and you don't need a financing contingency, like if the borrower is good to go, then you can just use the STIP. And I do have the STIP in here, but this is the same STIP that Ashley has given y'all.
528.
Yeah, and which basically gives us time to do this part of it. So even if the buyer is already approved and they don't need any days for financing because they're good, there's two parts going simultaneous to the condo approval. The borrower's getting underwritten, the condo's getting underwritten. So the borrower is already through underwriting, they're protected. We're good, we know that's not a problem. The condo is, we don't know yet. We have to do that underwriting, we have to get the docs, and that doesn't start till the contract. So if you're putting that STIP in, if you're not doing contingency, if you're doing a financing contingency anyway, I mean, I would say put like 14 days in to cover the condo, or you can do a shorter amount for the borrower or 0 for the borrower and then add the STIP. So that can give you, I would still say a couple weeks is ideal. If you're closing really fast, like if you're trying to close in 15, 18 days, then, maybe put 10 or 12. Obviously, we're gonna jump on it as soon as we get it. If you do want a contingency period for that condo, for us to get those docs from the HOA, which again, we don't have a lot of control over, but that STIP also says it gives us the time to get their approval done, or it covers the borrower if the condo is really slow and never sends us the doc. If we have nothing to underwrite, they're still covered, right?
Right, that's true. And so even if you have a long contingency period for your financing contingency, and you're doing a condo, still use that STIP. And the reason I say that is, let's say the condo just goes short, and even if you have 21 days of financing, you get to day 21 and the HOA has not given the documentation, lender can't really give you a denial letter because they don't have any information to deny the condo, right? So your borrower's kind of SOL. But if you have this condo STIP, they can go ahead and terminate because it says even if they haven't given information, then the borrower can terminate. So you want to have that extra flexibility, and really that STIP is not for FHA, because FHA is already contingent for the entirety of the contract. So you don't need it in your FHA loans, but for all your other transactions, you do want to put that in there.
Oh, FHA is already contingent.
Yeah, the FHA contingency exhibit, the very last paragraph says that it's contingent on the condo being approved by the lender. So that's already included for HOA, just not for your other loan types.
And FHA is a little different anyway, and we'll get to that. But it's, your conventional is, this is where we're doing a spot approval every single time they go under contract.
Erin?
Yes.
Can you minimize that screen so I can? Thank you.
All right. Let me get my little arrow back. Okay, so FHA condo approval, this I'm just kind of showing you, if you want, that is the website, and I can email it to y'all if you're interested, but if you're looking for a condo and you've got an FHA buyer, first of all, your choices are going to be fewer, because FHA is a different approval process. So whereas conventional is every time, we're doing every single condo on its own. FHA, they actually do blanket approvals, meaning that condo, we can look up and say, okay, your buyer's interested in, XYZ condo complex, we can pull it up on this website and search and see if it's approved. So FHA will do, the HOA can jump through a bunch of hoops, send in a bunch of documentation and get an approval from HOA that lasts several years. So usually 3 or 4 is what I commonly see. So this website will let us look up and see if that particular condo is approved. So if it's approved, you're good to go. We don't have to do all the things all the hoops we jump through on conventional. We don't have to get all that documentation. We just go here and we see it's approved, we're good. So the FHA, that's another reason. So the contract covers you, but it's also a different approval process anyway. They do, I will say this with an asterisk. Technically, they do have a spot approval process now. They have for a couple of years. It's terrible, and I've yet to see one get approved. So meaning if it's not on the approved list, you can still get information from the condo, send it to FHA, try to get it one-off approved that way. 8 out of 10 of them come back immediately, like not gonna work. So what they make us do is with the lender, order certain documents from the condo, send it to FHA. And this is before we can even order an FHA case number for it. So it really does drag out your timing, first of all. And then they'll look at that and tell us if we can if it's even, I don't even want to say approved, but okay to order the rest of the documents from the condo to actually send in for the full approval. So there's kind of like a mini step and then like the full step. But they're not fast on their approvals, and like I said, they're usually not successful. So if you've got an FHA buyer, I would strongly recommend looking for a place that is FHA approved, not going the route of trying to do a spot approval. And they're out there still, so, and we can help you with that. If you've got someone in a pre-approved and we're like, hey, they need to go FHA for whatever reason, I know they're looking at condos, we are trying our best to also get them conventionally approved, but sometimes people have waiting periods for, whatever, bankruptcy, short sale, that are all shorter on an FHA. So it may be that they only qualify for FHA for another reason and just can't go conventional. So if that's the case, we're really communicating that to you, like, hey, they're FHA, but I know they're looking at condos, so be really careful. This is what you want to look for, let me know if I can help. So anyway, this is what that website looks like. And this is kind of what it is if we're pulling it up. So if hey, this is the complex they're interested in, I can look for it, and then this is what we're looking for: status approved, expiration date. As long as it's approved and we're within that expiration date, we're good to go. There's nothing else we need to do on the condo end.
And we have to be, for the expiration date, you have to close before the expiration date?
Yes, you do. And sometimes you'll see expired under that status. And, don't totally lose hope, because we could call, they may be in the works of updating it. And if it's expired, but they've been approved before, and it's really something, or if you're a listing agent and hey, this isn't an FHA price range, I'm probably gonna get FHA offers on it, but I can see that it's expired. Let us know, because our condo department can even help with that, help the complex try to get it updated again. So, just, let us know, and again, we're a partner and we're gonna try to help you out, so.
I don't know if you're seeing a lot of this, but I'm having a lot of files that are getting like bumped recently. And so maybe pay extra attention to that expiration date. Like if that's within a month and you're gonna close in, 19 days, that's great. But if it gets bumped 2 weeks, all of a sudden you're outside of that. So maybe take note and be conscious of that, especially from the listing agent side, like using, having the other side use unilateral, do you want to agree to an extension? What all does that look like? But
Yeah, I mean, this is a good example, 9/29 of this year. So, they're most likely in the works of updating it, which just means they have to send updated stuff to FHA for them to review and re-update their approval. But, that's a perfect example where, hey, it's August now, you're fine as long as you close before then, but if you do get close to that date, do be mindful, so.
And a couple of my ones scooting out have been like, oh, because we've scooched, we're now outside of this time frame. We're now
Yeah.
on this issue, so it's kind of a sore spot for me at the moment. A hot topic.
So VA is similar to FHA, where they have blanket approval. They do not have a spot approval process at all. But do know that those are totally different. So a VA condo approval is not the same as an FHA. So it's the similar style. They're both, I call them umbrella approvals, meaning the complex is approved through a certain date, you're good to go if it's on your list, if it's on the list. But just because it's FHA approved doesn't mean it's automatically VA and vice versa. So they have their own website. So similar thing, we're looking for, condo report, and we're looking here, this is the customized one, similar, but it's its own entity. So we're putting it in, we can search by county, you can search by city, zip code, all of those different things. You can search by name. I never search by name just because if it's at all different, and sometimes what their marketing name is on the outside on their sign is different than what their actual legal name might be for this kind of stuff. So you might, look up 400 West P Street, but it's really something else, in here. So you think it's not approved, but maybe it really is. So I usually look up by city, zip, county, those kinds of things and get the list. And it's all sorted alphabetically. So you can look for the name, but at least or you can look for the address, things like that. But that would be my biggest recommendation there. So here's kind of what would come up here. When you do a search, you can see on the bottom of all the pages. So this is alphabetical. It starts with any numbers and then you can see it goes into A's. So if you're looking for something and it's an N, I would just click like page 8 or something, see where I fall, but you're looking for it, but you want the whole list. And you can also search approved only. So it'll ask if you want to search for all condos or approved only. Obviously, if you're looking to see if it's approved, select approved, it'll weed out the ones that aren't. Okay. So we kind of touched on this already, but condo versus townhome. So a fee simple townhome versus a condo, it's all in the title, it's all in the deed, like Ashley said. So that's really what you're wanting to look for. So the cost and the insurance are a little bit different. So insurance, we kind of touched on this before when we're looking at the HOA insurance, that's going to cover the whole building, the outside of everything. That means the buyer is going to get what's called an HO6 policy if it's a condo. It's a wall-in policy. So if the place burns down, the HOA is going to rebuild the structure, but everything inside that unit, obviously your client's belongings, but still all the finishes and stuff, what they're going to rebuild is basic. So their HO6 policy will cover it to be rebuilt how they want it, how it is. If it's upgraded, they want that in their policy. That's what their policy is going to cover, so that they can get it rebuilt to what they had. And that's a less expensive policy than a full, if you're buying a single family home, you're covering everything. So HO6 policy, general rule of thumb, probably run about $600 a year, so 50-ish bucks a month. So much less than a full insurance policy on a single family home. The interest rates on condos are different. So you've got a fee simple townhome or a single family home. Those are the same thing in the lender's eyes and the rate side. Condos are going to be about an 1/8 to 1/4 of a point higher. So if the going rate is about 6.75, you're probably going to pay about 6.875 or 7 on the condo. It's just considered a riskier type of property, so therefore that rate is just a little bit higher. So we're talking, obviously we're pre-approving people and they're looking at condos, we're explaining that, or if they're like, hey, I'm not sure what kind of properties, we're asking all those questions. So one, we can educate them, and two, we can pre-approve them properly. And so don't forget, that goes right along with what I just said, the HOA counts in their DCI, so that's the income ratio. So that's why we're asking them, okay, what kind of property are you looking at? Well, I'm kind of open, I might look at townhomes, might look at condos. Okay, so we'll start talking about HOA fees, how they affect the payment. So my clients that are unsure, if they're kind of open to whatever property they find that they like, we'll look at payments for a single family home that has no HOA. We'll look at payments for a townhome that's maybe 100, 150, and then we'll look at payments on a condo that's maybe 300 or 400, just so they can kind of get an idea and understand what that does to the sales price to keep their payments the same. So if they're paying $3,000 a month on a single family home, that price is gonna be higher than if they're paying $3,000 a month total on a condo, because we've got to fit in a $500 HOA. So really their payment on the property needs to be like $2,500 plus the HOA to get them to the total of $3,000. So we'll have different pre-approval letters and everything for them, just so they're prepared. Like, hey, if you find a house, you can go up to 500,000. If you find, a townhome and it's, 150 a month HOA, you can go up to, 475. You find a condo and it's 500,000 or $500 a month HOA, you want to be closer to 400. Whatever those numbers are, I mean, those up, don't quote me. But you can see that there's a relationship there. The higher the HOA, the lower their sales price needs to be to keep them in their monthly comfort zone of whatever they told me their payment is. So just remember that. Or if they're approved for a condo and you're looking at condos and this one's a $250 HOA and this one's a $750, they are out there. That's going to be a vastly different qualification. You're suddenly, this one at $750 a month, HOA needs to be much cheaper than this one for them to qualify for both. So just kind of understand that. We're always here with questions. We are explaining that to our clients, but for you guys to know that on your end too is important.
And know that the lender doesn't have easy, verifiable access to what these HOA fees are when they're going over this with your client. Because that's an issue I hear coming up a lot. People say, well, my lender told me it was $500 a month. And you're like, no, your lender gave you an estimate. There's no way for your lender to know. The lender's typically relying on the attorney to provide that exact info. And we are relying on the HOA to provide to us through that HOA closing letter that we have to order. So it's very often pretty far into the process where that end number is really verified. Your CAD should say it, but if, you're closing in November and it was $300 a month and the HOA has decided it's going to be $450 a month in 2024, that can have an impact. So just maybe tell them that the lender's estimated it and it'll be verified by the attorney later on in the process, just so Aaron doesn't get yelled at.
Yeah, because when we're running payments, we have no property. We don't know where they're gonna end up. So we're talking estimates 100%. We're like, hey, condos could run anywhere from $300 to $700 a month in HOA, depending on what the amenities are, what's included, where the thing is. So, and a lot of times I don't usually run into the position where I'm getting in trouble because my clients are like, hey, you said it would be this. It's usually I've got my agents, when they're gonna look at a condo, they'll text me or something and be like, hey, are they good at this? The HOA is, $500 a month, blah, blah, blah. And we'll hop in there and run a payment, just to let them know that. But yeah, I mean, if you guys in the field, the agent listing or buying, that's pulling that information, and then Ashley and her team is verifying the information, but that's toward the end of the loan process when we're already under contract. So at the beginning of that contract, before you go under contract, y'all are telling us, hey, this is what the HOA is, or the buyer's telling us. So, that is HOA. But yeah, just remembering that that's part of the DTI. So if they're vastly different, you need to make sure, hey, you qualify for that, right? But we will tell you also, when we're pre-approving, if I'm pre-approving someone, the client, we're gonna go over two things. We're gonna be like, okay, this is the max monthly payment I can approve you for. So this is your max sales price, assuming it's HOA or without an HOA, whatever. This is the max price because I need to keep your payment at this max number. That oftentimes is much more than they want to spend. I could maybe approve someone for an $8,000 a month payment based on PPI ratios, and they're like, oh, heck no, I don't want to be over $3,000. So then we're kind of coming down into that range and saying, okay, so to keep you at about 3,000, depending if it's an HOA of this or this, and your down payment is this is the number you want to search for sales price. So as an agent, when we send you all the pre-approval letter to say, hey, they're good to go, here's a letter. The letter may be at the very top of their chosen range, but we'll tell you, hey, they don't want to go over 500. I can tell you they can go way higher than that if they chose. That way, in the back of your mind, if they find something and it's 510, or they find something and the HOA is a little higher, as long as they're comfortable with that payment, I've already told you, hey, I can really qualify them way up here. They just have no desire to be there. Kind of that way, you guys know there's some wiggle room, and then it's really just, does the client want to do that? Or are they comfortable with it? The reverse is true also. There are times when I'm like, okay, they are maxing themselves out and this is where they want, they're trying to get the most that they can, so y'all don't go over this number, or if the HOA is higher, call me before you put something in, that kind of thing, so. These you can't really see, but it's really just, here it's gonna say it's a condominium, it's really just, as a listing agent, it's great if you can find that out from Ashley, or whatever, and get that information, so for sure what you're listing and that is correct. It helps everybody if that's correct. This is just another one, I did not put those in here, so. Here, do you want to talk a little bit about that? I think we kind of did, but this is the STIP that she was talking about.
Yeah, so 528, again, this needs to go in all of your non-FHA loans, because it's already contingent in FHA. But if you see the little numbers 1 and 2, kind of about 3 lines down, so if buyer obtains written notice from the lender indicating 1, it's declining buyer's loan because they can't approve the condo, or 2, buyer's lender is unable to determine whether the condo is approvable, if you will. So number 2, I think, is the biggest piece of help and what's not already covered in your financing contingency. Because if it's number 1 and you're within your financing contingency, they're already denying the loan for a legitimate reason. It's really number 2 that's the star of this particular show.
Kind of the gray area where you're making sure they're totally covered.
Exactly. And notice you're filling in the blanks. They've updated the forms to put blanks kind of at the beginning of stuff. Not the case for this STIP, it's hidden in the middle, so don't forget to fill in a number of days. Whether you're on the buy or list side, you always want to have a longer amount of days for this STIP than you do for your financing contingency. And the way you can tell your sellers why it's not really a big scary thing is they're going to need to know whether their property is approved or not. So in the off chance it's not, that's still valuable information, still going to be relevant to the next buyer unless it's a cash buyer. So this is not like a big get out of jail free card. And a lender is not going to be frauding and say, oh, we just couldn't get it, darn, and totally make that up because their buyer doesn't want to buy it, because they all have licenses and there's, ethics. Anyone with a license has some sort of ethical structure they have to abide by. So not a huge risk for sellers.
And you want us to do how many days?
I mean, I would do, if you could do 2 weeks, if you could do 14, awesome. If you're trying to close quicker than that and still, even if you're trying to close in 15 days, you can still put that. That just gives you the whole time to make sure the condo's okay. Because sometimes they just, that's the one piece we have no control over, the timing of getting those documents. We have more control over the appraisal, we can rush those, we've got our own team, we can, even rush the underwriting and the approval of the condo once we have the docs, but actually getting the docs and all the information or going back with questions to the HOA. As agents, you guys probably have had enough experience with HOA to know they are not the most cooperative. So sometimes it's just like pulling teeth. So that's really why we're saying as many days as you can, just because it's out of our, there's a part of that that's out of our hands. Exactly.
Hit the road. and-
Yeah, if you get up to like the end of that and they still haven't heard anything, it's a great point to call the listing agent and say, hey, right now, we're 1 day away from needing to terminate because the HOA and your seller's property still hasn't responded. We're happy to go ahead and extend this stipulation date. Otherwise, we're gonna have to terminate to keep my buyer protected. And probably the listing agent and the seller would say, okay, no problem. If it's they haven't gotten info from the HOA yet. And if it's a couple days before, they might jump on the phone and say, guys, we really need you to fill out that questionnaire. We really need you to send it in. Because HOA is not gonna talk to you as the buyer's agent or the buyer like they would respond to the seller who currently owns a property in that.
And we as a lender too, not all lenders do this, trust me, but I mean, we're monitoring this, obviously. I mean, we live and die by all the dates in the contract, including this one. And so we're gonna know if we're getting up to the last few days of that timing and say we haven't got the docs at all, or a lot of times we can get some of the initial docs just because they're from a website, but if there's any conditions or any where we have to go back and ask the HOA for additional information or additional insurance or, clarifications on anything, that's usually when we get slow responses for the most part. So when that's the case and we're coming up on this, we're also reaching out to both agents. We're calling out buyer's agents. We're also calling out listing agents and letting them know too from our side, hey, we're still waiting on this, we're really trying to get, we've sent multiple emails and left, 6 voicemails, they haven't responded. Could you see if your bot or your client, your seller can reach out to them, so we're also gonna get them involved, because we just wanna get the stuff done. But, it's good for you to know that too. I don't know why they put this in here, because nobody can read that, but this is an example of the questionnaire, so you can sort of see, there's a lot of information that we're asking for, okay? So we're not going through this together, but we're asking things like, some of those red flags, if there's one entity that owns over a certain amount, how many units are in the projects, how many units are delinquent? Is there any current litigation on the property? Does the HOA own all the amenities? With those kinds of things that, obviously we're looking for certain answers. So that's kind of what one looks like. So it's pretty in-depth, if you can see that from looking at that, so. Okay, discussion and questions. That's all I have for the content. So any situations you guys have run into or any questions on this or?
I'm just really glad to know this for today.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I did a lot of, the office I was part of before here was in Atlanta and we did condos constantly. And you just kind of learn things over the years too, but if you don't do a ton of them or things change too. I mean, guidelines change. Obviously, we all know that happens and there's no way y'all are going to remember everything. So just know the most important at the very beginning is knowing how it's titled. Because you can see all the stuff you have to do to a condo that we do not have to do if it's a townhome fee simple. So knowing from the get-go, before you list it or before you put in your offer, is it a condo or not? Let's get that deed and look at it. Because the rate can be a little different, the buyer's insurance is different, there's a whole separate underwriting approval process if it's a condo. So I don't want to scare you, most of the condos go through fine, but it does happen. So we definitely want everybody protected or earnest money protected in that situation.
Well, I know we talked about that special stuff with getting copy. How do we get that?
Wherever you go to get your contracts,
It's there.
one of the forms is the list of the GAR pre-written special stipulation.
The guard.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I know, it's really cool, really cool. So, yeah, I would just say that if you take away one thing from this class, well, I would say 2. If you take away 2 things from this class, is to find out on the front end if it's titled as a condo or not, and put the stip in, 528, put that stip in all your condo contracts. I mean, I don't even care if you put it in a contract, you don't need it, and that's better than not having it, maybe, but remember, FHA and VA are blanket, with any conventional condo, for sure, put that stip in, even if you're giving them a financing contingency. I like that. So those are the 2 things you have to remember. Any other questions that come up, just remember to call me. That's all you got to remember. That'll work too.
Yeah, and y'all should call Aaron when you're writing your contracts for the loan anyway, because you need to know how many days you need for financing, for appraisal, what you're filling in on those boxes on page, like the first page of the financing exhibits. You should never be like, well, the market rate is this. No, what is the rate that your buyer is talking to their lender about? So that, like, step 1 is what kind of property, and then step 2, you're talking to the lender before you even write the contract for your buyer to sign to get all those time rates.
I like it.
Good stuff. Thank you for all your information.
Yay, well, thank you for joining us. Here, I'll just put this up here in case y'all don't have our contact info. We probably have maps and hunters, but there's mine too, so. Shoot, I had one other thought and now it left me while you were talking. Oh, no, no, that's okay, that's okay. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thanks
I kind of
all.
like I kind of like your photographs. It's kind of like Goldilocks. You have one with full hair, one with half hair, and one with no hair.
I'm just right. Yep. I did. Oh, yeah. Look at. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Any other questions on Zoom? Nope.
No, but thank you.
You're welcome. You all have a great Monday. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see if I can figure this out.
never felt so technologically advanced as I did.
Oh, because this makes me feel technologically not advanced.
I clicked like the correct things, which is a role for me. Normally I'm like, how to do.
And me for everyone.